Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Conservative Poet with me, Amania. I'm so thrilled that you are joining me today. Today, I have a very, very special guest with us, Dr. Kathi Aultman. She is going to give us a little bit of her time, and I want to just talk a little bit about who she is and what she's done. And so Dr. Kathi is a retired board certified OBGYN. Once she used to perform abortions and even worked for the Planned Parenthood. But she has had a change of heart and she has been working diligently to really advocate for the unborn humans and advocate for babies and children. And so God really went in and changed her heart. And so we're going to just be blessed by her wisdom of what she's experienced in life and help us to understand what it means to abort children, what it means to grieve from them, and what it means to grow from all of that. So, Dr. Kathi is going to be put. Welcome, Dr. Kathi. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that you're here to help us, educate us on these things because a lot of times we just don't think about what goes on with this, like, all of the things that happens in the rooms back there, what happens in those special private places. And so I'm glad you'll be able to just enlighten us and just educate us on all of that, and especially what your story has been like. So, Dr. Kathi, just start us off from the beginning and how you started.
Well, I'm so glad that God worked this out. Um, I guess really the beginning is becoming an atheist by the time I got to college, even though I was a preacher's kid growing up. Um, Decided when I got pregnant by my future husband, decided that I had to get an abortion to so that I could continue on to be a doctor. I was afraid that our marriage wouldn't survive if we had to get married, and I was afraid of what everybody would think of me. And so I had an abortion. As it turned out, none of those reasons were valid. When I got to medical school, I met all of these women who had their babies first and then went to medical school. Our marriage ended in divorce anyway, and I realized that the people that mattered would have supported me. So none of those reasons were valid. But that affected my thinking. And so by the time I got to my OBGYN residency, I truly believed abortion was a woman's right. I didn't see a human embryo as any different than a chick embryo that we dissected in college.
Mhm.
If a baby was wanted, I immediately called him or her a baby. If the baby was unwanted, I called it a fetus. Um, so I had two distinctions based on whether the baby was wanted or not.
Mm.
Although in most OBGYN programs you can opt out if you don't want to perform abortions, or at least it was the case then, um, I didn't want to opt out because I thought that was a good way that I could help women. And so I not only learned how to do the D&C with suction abortions, first trimester abortions, but I learned how to do the D&E or dismemberment second trimester abortions.
Can you paint us a picture of what that really entails, like what those two things look like? I know that's
Are
kind
you
of graphic,
sure?
but I
Yeah.
want us to really understand like what's happening and what we're talking about, you know?
Okay. So with the first trimester D&C with suction, um, after numbing the cervix as best we can, we insert a plastic tube into the uterus and we suction everything out. And as the baby goes through the opening in the tube, the baby gets kind of mushed up and killed as it goes through the tube. And then afterwards, we have to open up the little sac and look at the tissue to make sure that all the parts are there, all the legs and arms and everything are in there. Because if not, if there's something left, then the woman can have a terrible infection. And some of the problems related to first trimester abortions, even though they're supposedly safe, is you can still have injury to the uterus, perforation of the uterus. And we had one girl come into the emergency room with her bowel hanging out of her vagina because of a perforation. Now, it's unclear to me whether she was first trimester or second trimester. I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But during the course of the procedure, he put a hole in her uterus, kept going, and didn't realize he was sucking her bowel down. So it's, and then you have the infection, bleeding, all of those things. With second trimester D&E abortions, excuse me, the cervix has to be dilated ahead of time. So it's not an emergency procedure. You can't use it as an emergency to save a woman's life.
Okay.
It takes 1 or 2 days ahead of time to dilate the cervix so that the body parts can come out. And so that's done. Sometimes people will administer something to kill the baby ahead of time. Other people don't and feel it's unnecessary. But that means that we are then pulling the arms and legs off little babies while they're alive. And we know now that at those gestations, they feel pain.
So, Dr. Kathi, I just want to really understand. So, at this point, the second trimester we're talking about, so the baby is now, like, how developed are we at this point? They've got good, strong little arms and legs, heads, they're developed. Heartbeat, everything.
Yeah, you're talking about, so the D&C with suction can be done up until about 14 to 15 weeks, so 3.5 months. But by the time we're doing this procedure, all the organs are complete. The baby's fully formed, looks like a little human being, which they are. They just are smaller, that's all. And we know that they can feel pain. And so, we just go in, suction the fluid out to bring the baby closer to the cervical opening, and then just proceed to pull off whatever we can, which is usually arms and legs first, and then go in. We try to get the head before we get the chest, because if you have just a little head rolling around, sometimes it's hard to get. When you've got the head, because the brains leak out and you see this white stuff coming out, and then you go back and try to get the thorax and the pelvis, and then the placenta. The problem comes if you don't get everything. Again, if you put a hole in the uterus and start pulling things out you shouldn't, or hit a major blood vessel. So with the D's and E's, there can be significant problems. It's very risky. The farther along in pregnancy you get, the higher the risk of death and injury.
So just so we understand again. So at this point, you're literally pulling like the arms out of the body. So yes. It's not, like when you're cutting up a piece of chicken, you cut it up first and you're able to pull it out. But with this, how is it that you're able to just pull it apart like that?
So the cervical opening, is smaller than the whole baby. And so by grabbing a part and pulling it through the cervix, then you pull with enough force that you can just rip it off. And now at a certain point, after you get about 5 months, 23 weeks, it's very difficult. The baby's tissues are too strong to be able to do that. That's when they start talking about intact D&E or DNX, partial birth abortion. Those are all the same thing, where in that case, again, they have to dilate for several days. Then they go up and try to grab the feet, deliver the baby up to the neck, and then insert something in the back of the head and suck out the brains to decompress the head, and then remove the whole baby. Now, there was a ban, a partial birth abortion ban that was passed nationally. And I always thought, okay, they're not doing that procedure anymore. However, it's only banned if it's a live baby. So they can go in and they can give a feticide or something to kill the baby, and then they can do that procedure.
So they are literally, so this baby is able, it's got strong legs and arms at this point, and you go in and you pull it out by the legs, because right now you can no longer detach the arms because it's formed. And so now you're pulling it out that way, and then you pull it out halfway, and then you inject it with some to pull out, to suck out its brain.
Yeah, yeah. And actually it's more than halfway. You know, you're delivering it up to the neck, and as you're pulling, the cervix is close to the, so basically the body, you know, the body is pretty much out. And you know, even when I was doing abortions, when I first heard that procedure described, I didn't understand why they weren't arrested for murder, because to me, even though I was doing abortions, that was definitely murder. You know, to have the baby almost completely born, and then you kill it by sticking something in its head. um Crazy,
And
crazy.
people did those procedures, like they do those procedures.
Yes.
Is it still being
And
done today?
yes, and there are some, you know, David DeLeiden has done, and the Center for Medical Progress has done a lot of undercover work, and they actually filmed Planned Parenthood employees selling baby parts, and technicians saying the heart was still beating when they collected the heart. Um, and
So it's
the Yeah, the when I was, you know, again, when I first heard of this, I thought, wow, that's a perfect procedure if you want to collect organs, because you can keep that baby alive and then basically just take the organs out so they're fresh. You know, the baby hasn't died first. And it's horrific, but people are sliding by and getting around the law because it's, you know, the intent. And it turns out that this is probably happening. The um, the people that are buying these organs want them as fresh as possible, and so the people doing the procedures are wanting to comply. They don't they don't want you to inject digoxin or anything to kill the baby ahead of time. So what they're doing is cutting the cord at the last minute, something like that, to um, to get by the law. But basically, we're pretty sure that there are babies that are going through this horrific procedure and having their organs taken while they're still alive.
I mean, just envisioning this right now, just seeing the vision of, here's the mama, the baby is literally hanging out of her, and it's still alive, and they are going in and literally cutting out what they want, the parts of what they want in this baby who is alive, who can feel this thing, because they want to be able to preserve those organs and cut it out while the baby is still living
Yeah.
and
Now,
breathing.
yeah. Now, I don't know in these cases if the baby has, by that point, actually been delivered. You know, technically, it may be difficult to do while the
Yeah,
baby's
the
still.
head is still inside the mama.
If it's still inside the mama, then it's technically difficult. But the other thing that happens is they can induce labor, and they call it a medication abortion or induction abortion. And 50% of the time, this is a third trimester, can be a second or third trimester procedure. They did a study, and 50% of the time, if you do an induction abortion, the baby will come out alive if you have not given a feticide, if you haven't given something to kill it. And those are other cases where babies are being delivered, they haven't used a feticide, and then we don't know at what point these organs are being taken and what's happening to these babies once they're delivered, which is why it's so critical that laws are passed protecting babies. Now, legally, that baby's born. They should be protected, but they're not being protected. They're being left to just die, medical neglect. And people say, oh, this doesn't happen, but it does happen. We need to have extra protections for them. Those babies should be treated the same way any other baby of the same gestational age is treated.
You know, Dr. Kathy, I think it was like a year, maybe 2 years ago. I remember that there was a bill that was put forth in Congress, and it was about the doctors and the babies. And if a doctor did an abortion that was botched and the baby was still alive on the table, that they had an obligation to protect that child, to get help, even if they weren't going to save the baby, but at least do the right thing to get that baby to the proper place to get help. So this was a bill that was being looked at. But if I remember correctly, there were a majority in the Congress that didn't want to do that. They would rather the children, the babies, die right there rather than the doctor saying, look, we tried this thing, we tried this abortion, it didn't work. We got a screaming child here hurt. We need to help it, as opposed to letting it die.
Right.
And a lot of the members of Congress, um, you know, they didn't want to do that. Tell Can you talk a little bit about that if you know anything
So,
about it?
yeah. So I testified about that bill, and the thing was, they kept saying it doesn't happen. The babies are already protected. It's already against the law. But the problem is that it is happening, and people do let these babies die. We've got nurses who have come forward and said, they were told to let these babies die. And we have to have that kind of legislation to protect them, because it is true. People say, oh, not happening. Yes, it is.
I remember during the 2024 election cycle, they had a film out. It was about abortion. It was about, I forget what it was called, um, but it was about abortion, and it was about Planned Parenthood and one pastor, I think it was, who ended up in one of the Planned Parenthood dumpsters. And he literally talked about finding the remains, the bones of dead children, dead babies in the Planned Parenthood dumpsters. And for him, that changed everything. And he started his ministry, his advocacy work. I forget what pastor it was, but yeah, it's happening because there are bones left over, because these are many we's, many people. And for people to say, they're not human, or they're just a clump of cells, for me, it's crazy, because this is how we all started. We, the human, this is how we begin. This is, how it happens. So it's for me, it's crazy and mind-boggling that people would say, oh, it's just a clump of cells, when we ourselves were a clump of cells, if you will, at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the abortion pill. People kind of look at the uterus sort of as a black box, don't know what's going on in there. Oh, I'm pregnant, but not really putting it together that there's an actual baby in there, or trying, denying it.
Mm-hmm.
You take the abortion pill, you're there by yourself. You've become the abortionist, so you can't blame anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You take this pill, have a lot of pain, a lot of bleeding, there by yourself, probably in the bathroom or the shower. Deliver this baby into the toilet or onto the floor, and you see what you've done. You see your baby. And I recently looked at a whole series of pictures of babies that have been aborted through the abortion pill. And I and another gal were asked to try to get gestational ages for these babies. And I can tell you, some of these babies were so big. The one should have been in the nursery. But women now are coming forward, are taking pictures, are talking about these horrendous experiences. And, people think, oh, it's safe, you just take this pill. These medical abortions are more dangerous than surgical abortions, mainly because of the hemorrhage and the missed ruptured ectopics. And during COVID, they used that as an excuse to eliminate the need for an exam. But one of the contraindications to taking the abortion pill regimen is ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy outside the uterus. Now, an ectopic pregnancy, treating an ectopic pregnancy, that's not an abortion. The pregnancy cannot survive, and it's very likely it will kill the mother if it continues. So normally, if you in the past, you would go to the doctor, they'd make sure you didn't have an ectopic pregnancy, and and then give you the pills. Well, the most common cause of death from the abortion pill regimen is ruptured ectopic pregnancy, followed by sepsis and infection, especially if things are not completely eliminated, and hemorrhage. And then it was interesting, but several of the deaths were homicide and suicide and drug overdose. So not only are women being affected physically, but also emotionally, psychologically, and that's becoming more and more clear, how much psychological risk there is. And I knew from the very beginning, what I saw in my patients was no woman can remain unscathed after killing her baby.
Yeah.
You are going to pay a price.
Yeah. Yeah. With what you're saying with the abortion pill, so what I'm envisioning is, here you are, you're several months in. Now, can the pill be taken at any time during the pregnancy and this happens? Is there like stronger doses for the bigger the fetus or the bigger the baby is?
So the abortion pill regimen that, quote, you can get online and without a doctor's visit and stuff, that's only supposed to be, it's only approved for up to 10 weeks. However, using a less menstrual period to determine how pregnant you are is very inaccurate. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think it's only correct, or I think there's at least an 11% inaccuracy rate. So you could take the pill thinking you're where you should be, and you're not. You have an increased risk of bleeding and all the other complications. And although you're not supposed to take it in the, second, third trimester, if you do, you may end up with either an abortion or an incomplete abortion. One of these babies definitely was third trimester that I saw the picture of. Mm-hmm. Now, there's actually, I alluded to earlier, in medication abortion or induction abortion, where they use the same medications, but it's a little bit different protocol, and they keep repeating the Mifepristone, and they may switch and use other drugs. And those are normally done in some sort of a healthcare setting.
So I'm sort of envisioning, here you are, maybe beyond the 10 week numbers, and you're pregnant and you know it, and you take one of these things and things don't go according to plan, which you would think. So now the fetus is now like hanging loose from her, and the umbilical cord is still connected to the baby, like, because that's what I'm envisioning, like, this baby is now pushed out of you, the umbilical cord is there, it's a mess, it's a bleeding mess. Can you help me understand what I'm like putting together here?
So the problem is that you don't have any help. And what most of these clinics say is, if you got it through a clinic, if you even had any connection, they normally say go to the ER. They don't often take responsibility. And one of the things that, as we were reviewing all of these adverse events from the FDA, we were sort of shocked to see how poor the follow-up care was for these women. And they would come back and be complaining of bleeding and cramping, and they were either told to go to the ER or this is normal. Thankfully, many of them went to the ER, even though they kept telling them it's normal, and thankfully their lives were saved. But where else do we have people do their own operations? I remember when they first approved RU486, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. Miscarriage is one of the true GYN emergencies, can be one of the true GYN emergencies. I remember being at dinner one night, and I could see the waiter coming with my food, and I got a call from the emergency room, and they said, you need to get here now. We've got a girl, she's dying. We have her in mass trousers, which are special pants that puff up to constrict the blood in the legs and try to get it back to centrally to save her life. And I couldn't even stop for one bite. I had to speed to the emergency room, speed to the OR. They said, we've got her on the OR table for you. I just ran in, scrubbed my hands, and basically at that point did a DNC on her and stopped her bleeding. But miscarriages can be very dangerous, and these procedures can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, so that's essentially what's happening, is they're causing a miscarriage within, with the baby.
Yeah. And let me throw in here, because this came up in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They kept arguing that women won't be able to be treated for miscarriage, because the abortion laws and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Treating a miscarriage is not the same as doing an abortion. You might use the same procedures. So for a miscarriage, we would traditionally use the DNC with suction to remove whatever was still there, because with a miscarriage, the baby's gone or the baby's dead, and you've got to stop the bleeding. So that's what you use.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors were never confused about this up until suddenly the media is making it confused. We knew it wasn't the same as treating an ectopic pregnancy, treating miscarriage. There are things like premature rupture of membranes, things that are putting the woman's life at danger and just have to be treated. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
But the media really, I think, is responsible for some of these deaths that have occurred, where girls think that if they go in, they've taken it, and they're having a problem, they think they're going to get in trouble, or they won't be treated. It's crazy. That's not the case.
Mm-hmm. What does the federal government have to do with all of this? These drugs, the FDA. Is there any guidelines, or um, how do they display these side effects that women and girls deal with when it comes to taking these drugs?
So the FDA basically got rid of almost all the guidelines. The only thing that practitioners have to report now are deaths. They used to have to report adverse incidents. They took that away, increased the gestational age that they could be given at, all at the same time as removing, the necessity for reporting complications. It's very easy to say that something is safe if you don't have to report complications.
Right.
And most doctors are not going to take it upon themselves to call the FDA or, to say, oh, my patient had a complication, if it's not required, especially if you're very pro-abortion and don't want to do anything that's going to rock the boat.
Last evening I was at an event, and Dr. John Littell was the speaker, and he talked a little bit about, you know, COVID and what happened there. And just like we're talking right now about complications and what happened to people during that time. And I actually said to him I was going to be speaking with you today, and he was very impressed that I got you. um, but I mean, and he talked about, because he had to go literally against he had to go against everybody to make sure that people were taken care of, that they were able to get the kind of medications that they needed. And there were different drugs, that the clinics and the doctors and the hospitals were trying to get people to take, and he knew what worked. And he lost so much during that era because he stood up for life, and he stood up for people. And it's right now we have the government who is supposed to be the one. That's what the FDA is supposed to be here to do, to protect we the people, to make sure that these drugs are good for us, make sure we know exactly what we're getting into. But what we see is that they are not on the side of we the people. They're side of the pharmaceuticals and the drug companies. And people are dying left and right, just like during the COVID. And women are dying left and right, babies are dying left and right. And the government, essentially the FDA, who's supposed to protect, isn't doing that.
Right. Yeah. By the way, I keep seeing the abortion pill reversal hotline going past, and I wanted to make sure I said something about that.
Okay.
So if a woman has taken the first of it's not just one pill, okay? So you've got two different drugs, several pills. After a woman has taken the Mifepristone, the next day or within 1 to 2 days, she takes the second drug, the misoprostol. And if after taking the first drug, she thinks, oh my gosh, I've made a mistake, I don't want to lose my baby, she can call this hotline, the abortion pill reversal hotline, and they can connect her up with a physician who can give her progesterone, and hopefully save her pregnancy. Now, it's not 100%, but there have been thousands of babies saved now using this method. So the way the Mifepristone works is it blocks progesterone, which normally would be produced after the egg ovulates. A corpus luteum is formed that produces progesterone and supports the pregnancy until it's using the mother's progesterone. And so for years, we've given progesterone to women who are having these early miscarriages, which we oftentimes would call it a corpus luteal defect. Their corpus luteum wasn't making enough progesterone to support the pregnancy. So we would give them progesterone. And that's all this is. That's all we're doing, is giving this natural progesterone that our body makes, and we've used for years and years and years, and it's saving these babies. And yet there are states that have said, you cannot talk about this because there's not enough evidence. And yet when we looked at the study, where that they're basing all this on, that it's no good. The study was stopped because the women who were only taking the misoprostol had too much hemorrhage. Well, the women who took the mifepristone, didn't take the misoprostol, but took the progesterone, they were not hemorrhaging like that. So it was it wasn't the progesterone therapy that was the problem, it was the other. And yet, the way they talk about this study, it had to be stopped because it was too dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people don't actually read this study.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, so if the ladies, the women who are experiencing this, they've already taken one pill to get the abortion going,
Mm-hmm.
and they change their minds before they take the next set,
Yeah.
and they go and get help. Now, those babies, do they and they end up going through and being birthed? Is there health defects within those babies that, from what the drug was, the drug that was given to them beforehand?
As long as they've only taken mifepristone, there's not a problem.
Okay.
If they've taken both drugs, the misoprostol is what we call teratogenic, means it can cause some birth defects.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a risk of
Mm-hmm.
there's a higher risk that it won't work, and it's not normally given then.
Mm-hmm.
But if it does work, there could be a congenital defect.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing, though, is that initially the FDA had required the reporting of failures, okay, and that they were supposed to set up a registry. Well, they finagled their way out of that, but in the cases, excuse me, the cases that we looked at, there were babies that survived, and but there's no way of knowing what happened to these babies. Was there anything wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
We did see that some had some defects, but just because you take the pill doesn't mean you're going to necessarily abort the baby. There may be some that survive and may survive with problems.
Mm. I wanted to ask you, your experience in the operating rooms. And when I heard you speak a couple of weeks ago, you talked a little bit about where you, it all came together for you, where you realized that I don't want to do this. You saw several, or one person who came in several times, and abortion after abortion, and you realize that this person is using abortion as contraception. Can you talk to us a little bit about that realization and that experience?
So I was, excuse me, I was so gung ho on abortion that I even did abortion. I moonlighted doing abortions even when I was pregnant. And I didn't see any problem with that because their baby wasn't wanted, my baby was. But after I had my baby and I went back to the clinic, the first patient I saw was this patient who I had done several abortions on her, and I hadn't been doing them that long. I went to the clinic manager and said, I don't want to do this. She's just using it as birth control. And they said, it's not your choice, it's hers. You have to do it. And I looked at the woman and said, yeah, but you're not doing the killing. And so something happened in my mind after I delivered my baby. Somehow I kind of made that baby fetus connection, and I was looking at it differently. I didn't realize at the time, but I was. And then the second patient that came in with a friend, and sometimes people wanted to see the tissue, and we would show them. And her girlfriend said, do you want to see the tissue? And she said, no, I just want to kill it. And I thought, I didn't say anything, but I I thought, what did this baby ever do? Yeah, maybe you want to get rid of the baby, but what has this baby ever done to you? And then the third patient that actually, after I saw this third patient, I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted. She'd had four children. She and her husband decided that they just couldn't afford another one. And so they decided on abortion. She cried the entire time she was there. And that was it for me. I never did another abortion. Unfortunately, I still believed in abortion though. And it wasn't until years later, after I'd become a Christian, um, thankfully, some Christian friends embraced me. And then, after we had enough of a relationship, one of them finally said, um, Kathi, I know that you feel strongly about abortion, but would you read this article? And the article compared abortion to the Holocaust. And my father was an observer when the first concentration camp was liberated in World War II. So I grew up with all those pictures and stories. And when I became a doctor, I couldn't figure out how the German doctors could do the atrocious things they did in the camps. And suddenly I realized they could do what they did to their victims, because just as I didn't consider fetuses as human beings, they didn't consider their victims as human beings. And that was when I had a total change in my belief on abortion. And when I first realized that I was a mass murderer. And right then, Ted Bundy was in the news, who was a serial killer. And everybody just thought he was so horrible, so grotesque. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've killed a lot more people than Ted Bundy. And thankfully, I had Christian friends around. I was able to get the counseling that I needed, the healing that I needed. And then I said, okay, God, I'll do whatever you want. Answered an email asking for doctors to go to Washington to testify on partial birth abortion. They already had enough people, but that opened the door, and I found myself testifying throughout the country.
Wow. Wow. So tell us a little bit about your experience of going to Washington, D.C. and dealing with legislatures and policy and all of these things that, that deals with we the people, we the humans, we the people. Talk
Mhm.
to us about that, about your experience in Congress.
So, after testifying in a lot of different states, I did eventually end up testifying before the House in 2002 on partial birth abortion, and that was probably the worst experience I've ever had, because at that time there were not hardly any pro-life legislators there. They
Mhm.
were all rabidly pro-abortion, and they just attacked me every way that they could. As a matter of fact, one of the congressmen actually stood up and said, Dr. Aultman, I apologize to you for my colleagues because they're being so terrible. Um, but the one thing I will say is I became very discouraged right before the ban was passed, the national ban was passed. I became so discouraged because every time I went to court, well, every time I testified, it seemed like it never got passed. And if it did get passed, then it was enjoined by the courts.
Mhm.
And I'd testify in court and it would fail. And I say that because I want people not to get discouraged when they're, in this kind of a fight. You
Mhm.
never know what God's going to do. And I was absolutely shocked when the national ban passed.
Wow. So you started off and then you ended up in Planned Parenthood. You've gone to Congress. You've fought to save babies. Talk to us about your faith and how God has really, brought you full circle to advocate for life as opposed to when you took life.
So I'm just so thankful that God didn't give up on me. That he pursued me and he plucked me out of the abyss of abortion and just kept working on me. It's one little step at a time. First, I decided, okay, I can't do this anymore. Can't kill babies just because they're not wanted. Then he began to work on my attitude. My friend showed me that article. Um, and it was kind of step by step because, for a while I still thought, well, if a woman's raped, that's enough of a reason. Until, as I was testifying, I met women who had been raped, had kept their children, the blessings they had been. The one woman was viciously attacked, had to have all kinds of surgery. Had she not kept that pregnancy, she never would have had a child because shortly thereafter they had to remove her uterus. As I was testifying, it was very grueling. I always felt like I was put through a meat grinder, and uh, I remember one time I was testifying in Arkansas, and God pulled me out of space and time. And as the prosecutor was grilling me, all of a sudden God said to my heart, He just stopped everything and said to my heart, if you hadn't done the things that you've done, I couldn't be using you now. And I thought, how gracious for God to give me that reassurance right when I needed it. Mm-hmm. And the two things that I felt most embarrassed about as a Christian, well, three things, were I had had 2 divorces, and I had killed my own child, and I'd killed other people's children. And I thought, how gracious of God to do that for me right as I was in the fire. Mm-hmm. And then another time, towards the end, I was pretty exhausted. And I said, Lord, you're going to have to be really clear with me because I don't want to do this. I was asked to go testify in South Florida. And I said, I don't want to go. That night, I woke up at about 4 a.m. and I felt like I should open my Bible. And so I opened my Bible, and I'll read what my Bible said. I just opened it randomly, and it was Proverbs 24, 10 through 12. If you falter in times of trouble, how small is your strength? Rescue those being led away to death. Hold back those staggering toward slaughter. If you say, but we knew nothing about this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it? Does not he who guards your life know it? Will he not repay each person according to what he has done? Now, I never remembered that was in the Psalms. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, okay.
Yeah, that's the hammer.
That's a hammer. And so then the next night, went to bed, happened to have a different Bible on my bedside. It was the New King James I had just started reading. Same thing happened. I woke up at about 4 a.m., felt like I needed to open my Bible. I opened that Bible, and it opened to Proverbs 31:8. And it said, open your mouth for the speechless in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Now, that's the only version translation that says it exactly that way. So not only did he have to give me that scripture, I had to have the right Bible there.
Right.
And then the third night, I had gone to midweek service, and this young mother walks in with this little tiny preemie baby, really preemie. I'm surprised she was out and about with a baby that size. And I started bawling because this is the size baby they were doing these partial birth abortions on. And I couldn't stop crying. And I said, okay, Uncle, I'll go. And so I did that. And then things just kind of dried up. I'd always continued practicing, but I ended up not having to do any of this stuff, and just went back to practicing for about 20 years. And then all of a sudden, I became allergic to everything, my gloves, my gown, my hat, everything, and had to suddenly quit and go out on disability. And I'd always sort of in my heart wanted to go on the mission field, or, I had worked at some of these free healthcare clinics, to do free care. Thought I would be doing stuff like that, and I couldn't. And so about a year and a half after I had to stay in my house, not see people, not do anything, about a year and a half, I remember I was feeling much better. I was doing better. I could go out. I remember praying, Lord, would you still let me do something important? And that week, I got a call that there was a senator who wanted me to come to Washington and testify on the heartbeat bill, which I did. Yeah. And this time, it was amazing. The Susan B. Anthony list is a group who tries to help pro-life legislators get elected.
Yes.
And this time, there are all these pro-life guys. And not only were they pro-life, but they were pro-humans, pro-people. They were such wonderful people. My opinion of legislators before that was not very good from my first experience. But right. These were all very kind, competent people. And so still grueling, but it was a much better experience that time. And again, the floodgates opened. I ended up testifying throughout the country. Charlotte Lozier Institute approached me and invited me to become a scholar with their group, which I have. And that's what I've done ever since. Oh, interesting though. Okay, so just prior to COVID, I was doing my taxes, and I realized I was going somewhere every 2 weeks, going to the airport every 2 weeks. COVID hit, and all of a sudden all that stopped. And that was when God opened the door to writing, and I ended up being involved in writing this paper on Mifepristone.
Okay.
And then video, and I actually did I was asked to testify at a hearing in Pennsylvania on the organ harvesting that was going on there at Pitt. And that was very disconcerting because they could see me on the video, but I couldn't see them. So it's very difficult to talk to people.
Yeah.
See them, can't see their expressions,
Yeah.
Very weird. Very weird.
I'm sure. Wow. Well, we've come upon just about an hour of our conversation. I would love for you to be able to read your poem if you're able to, and then I will read mine.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I haven't heard yours.
No, you haven't heard mine.
Okay, let me find my poem. Here it is.
Okay. Well, you know what? I will read mine, being that you've never heard it. I'll let it debut.
Okay.
It's still in my book. I didn't have a time to type it up or anything. So
go ahead.
Here is my poem, and this is because of the body of work, the poem that you wrote. And as I was sitting there, and I shared a little bit of this with you, as I was sitting there, hearing your poem, the Lord put in my heart, because I've been working on the side of the men who's been dealing with abortion. And last year I did a panel conversation of dads or fathers who participated in the abortion of their children, or fathers who has lost children. And so we had a panel of two that participated, one that a young guy who couldn't have and wanted children, and we had another gentleman who adopted because he couldn't have any. So we had a variety of different men bringing their thoughts and opinions to the conversation of life. And so I've been working with some of these men, and just in reference to the conversation. So the Lord put in my heart, what about the dads? What about a poem for them? And so this is what I came up with.
You know what though? I
Mhm.
think I think I should read mine first.
Okay,
Since yours
that would
was
give
written
a good
based
idea as to why the second one came up to life.
about right. Okay. My poem is entitled Hello Mommy, I'm Here, It's Me. I'm so glad to be here. What a wonderful place. Your heartbeat soothes me as I float cozy and warm. The rhythm of your movement rocks me to sleep. I love you, Mommy. And I'm going to interrupt here. I did not write this. God woke me up at 4 a.m. again, and these words just started coming into my mind. And so I got up and I just started writing them down. So it wasn't me. Um, you know I'm here. Let's see. You don't know I'm here yet, and I can't wait for you to find out. I know you will be excited to get as wonderful a gift as me. God picked me especially for you. I long to meet you. I've been tapping on your tummy, hoping you will notice me. I'm here, Mommy. It's me. It's getting a bit squishy in here now, but it gives me a chance to feel my body against yours and feel your touch. Sometimes I can hear your lovely voice. I love it when you laugh and sing. Was that chocolate you just ate? How nice it is to be here. How nice it is to be me. Why are you crying, Mommy? I thought you would be happy to know I was here. I might be inconvenient, but it will all work out. Wait and see. God has a plan. Does it really matter how I came to be? I'm here, Mommy. It's me. I only need to stay a little while till I can be on my own. Won't you give me a chance? I can be a blessing if you let me. I'm yours, Mommy. I'm me. Are you available yet? If you really can't keep me, let me bless someone else. Listen to your heart. Don't kill me, Mommy. I'm here. It's me. Give me a chance to see who I can be. There's no guarantee I'll be perfect, but I will be unique. I'm here, Mommy. It's me. Perhaps perhaps I will be an artist or a geologist. Maybe I will find a cure for cancer or broker a peace that keeps us from war. You will never know if you kill me. Don't listen to those who say I'm just a blob of tissue. I'm real, Mommy. I'm me. I have hopes and dreams and a will to live. Give me the chance to see a rainbow and hear the birds sing, to taste lemonade and smell a rose. I want to run and jump and tumble in the grass. I want to feel the warmth of the sun on my face. I'm here, Mommy. It's me. Let me stay just a little longer. When I'm strong enough, I will leave. I know there are others who can love me if you cannot keep me, and I will thank you for your mercy and sacrifice. Please let me live, Mommy. Let me be me. I'm here, Mommy. It's me.
Wow. Chills when I tell you. And the Lord just woke you up and gave you pen and paper, and you just sort of let it all out.
I,
For
I
me,
did. He just kept giving me the words, and
hmm
yep.
hmm for me, when I was sitting there listening to the poem, listening to you, and he put in my heart, you know, Daddy, I'm here. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to write a piece on that. And so that day I kept thinking, okay, I need to write this, but I'm not sure where we're going with it. And so that night I picked up my book, and I just started writing, and here it is.
Mhm.
It says, Daddy, I'm here. Your little mini you is growing safely in a new place. It's unfamiliar here, but it's warm and soft, and I'm not afraid. Daddy, I'm here, growing bigger every day. I've developed a heartbeat. I have the tiniest little heart, but it beats and I'm alive. Daddy, you see, I am alive. I've developed eyes to see. I can't wait to lay them on you. I've developed hands to clap. I can't wait to give you a high five. I've developed feet to walk. I can't wait to run into your arms. I've developed ears to hear. I can't wait to hear the wisdom you will share. I've developed mouth to speak. I can't wait to tell you, Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I'm here. Daddy, there's been some unrest in this new place. I'm no longer feeling safe. I've been here for a little while, growing strong, but I'm not feeling the love. Not anymore, no warmth at all. Daddy, I'm here. I need your help. The food and beverage is making me sick. Daddy, I'm here. Please help me in this place. I'm so cold here. There's no warmth. Darkness has overtaken my eyes. I can't feel my legs or arms anymore. Daddy, I'm here, but I'm fading away. I can't fight off the coldness anymore. Daddy, I don't have the strength to fight to stay here. Oh, Daddy, please, can you fight for me? I want to laugh with you. I want to see you. I want to be with you. Daddy, I'm here. Daddy, can you fight for me? I'm so afraid and I ache all over. This place is not safe. My tiny little heart is broken. Daddy, I don't think I'm going to make it out alive. Daddy, I'm here no more.
Uh,
That's it. That's it. That's what God gave me to your poem.
and that's so, we tell men that they shouldn't have anything to say about it. But this is their baby too. We are the temporary caretaker of this precious gift.
Yeah.
But that baby is also theirs. And there've been just these heartbreaking stories of fathers who wanted their baby and the mother just refuses. They say, well, take care of all the expenses, I'll raise the baby, you don't have to do anything with it. And they just won't. And it's so sad because they have no legal ability to do anything. And you know abortion is tragedy. It not only kills the baby, injures women, it also affects men.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, that's what's happening. And I've been blessed to be introduced to a gentleman who has experience, and he is working on helping men heal and helping men understand what it is. Because even for him, he said that during his experience there's been so, like, he has his own story to tell, but his experience is that this thing has crippled because it's blood on his hands, and he couldn't help, he couldn't save, and he participated in the death. And and as a man who's supposed to protect and cover his seed, and he wasn't able to do that, or he participated in that. So growing back from that, he's unable to really move forward in life because these things are still here, the blood still drips from his hands. But because of the grace of God, he is overcoming that. But a lot of men, they fall short in life, and they don't understand it's because you have blood on your hands also, and you have not worked it out where these babies, you're pretty much setting them free. Because in order for you to be free, you have to sort of make peace with this thing. And so I'm just learning a lot from the male perspective, a little bit from the dad's perspective. And because, again, their voices are usually stifled and you don't hear anything from them, because if they participate in the conversation, then, society doesn't look at that as good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And we need men to be there for us. We have completely toppled men. We've taken them out of the place where God placed them to be our protectors and our helpers,
Yeah.
and we're seeing the downsides of that now.
Yeah. Yeah. So very, very interesting. Well, I'm going to say, any last words, anything you'd like to add to the conversation before we wrap it up?
Just that poem is really beautiful and moving and definitely God ordained. But
Wow.
just to the young women out there, you do not need abortion to be able to live out your dreams, to be able to compete with men in the workplace. Abortion is not necessary. Our society has used abortion to as the cure all for our social problems, and it's just wreaking havoc. It's creating more problems than it should, than it we thought it would.
Hmm.
And you know our government needs, what they need to be doing is, instead of paying all this money to Planned Parenthood for abortions, they need to be creating daycare for young mothers and all kinds of support for mothers, you know, support for adoption and all of these other alternatives that are healthier.
Yeah. 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 I'm in agreement that women, that we do need resources, as opposed to the resource. Yeah, the government gives so much money to Planned Parenthood, and it could go to doing different things, education, even
Mhm.
prevention, educating them on how to really properly take care of themselves, teaching them about self-love, because again, not to even get into these situations to begin with, and saving yourself for the right moment. And there's, if you're in a marriage, more than likely it wouldn't happen. So all of these things, the money could go to help. And so yes, I agree that the government really should do better when it comes to how they give their money, especially to places like Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that here in Florida that Governor DeSantis has allocated millions towards helping young mothers, and that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And thank God for pregnancy resource centers.
Hmm.
Without them, I don't know what young women would do. So here you have Planned Parenthood saying that they are the great saviors of women, but
Hmm.
they're going to make you pay for your abortion, and then not going to really give you the alternatives, and then they're going to leave you high and dry after that. Whereas the
Hmm.
pregnancy centers say, this is what we can offer you. They pretty much do anything they can to help you so you don't have to have an abortion, because a lot of women think they have no choice.
Hmm.
They give them the choice. And they also, if a woman has an abortion and then is upset and distraught, they will support her. Even if she makes a decision that they don't like,
Yeah.
they will still support her, and they will go all the way through that pregnancy with her, all the way up in the first couple of years of life, supporting her
Yeah. Yeah.
and her child.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and we witnessed that at the Fiona Jackson Pregnancy Center breakfast couple last week or whenever it was. We saw that the young girls and the young lady with her little one, and yeah, it's full circle, and pictures of them doing the baby showers and just the whole thing. And you're right, centers like that is what's needed, a
Mhm.
place where women can go and really get help during the whole process, and not just during the pregnancy but after as well. And we saw that they actually awarded girls even going into college. That's still the same help. That's what being pro-life is all about, pro-human. It's not just about getting them, okay, not killing the baby in the womb, but once we walk them through it, then they know that there's resources as the child progresses, because we're pro-life as a whole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
pro,
yes.
pro bountiful life,
Yeah.
and helping these girls get their education and get the training that they need to be able to thrive.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and if they're open to it, helping them to find Jesus. And
Yes.
that's really a big
That
key.
that is the key, is finding you Jesus, finding yourself in he, because once you know you are the daughter of a king, then that makes you a princess. And therefore you need to be treated as such. And that's what a lot of us lack, is knowing that God loves us, and he loves us right where we are. And and as long as we come to the Father and submit, he will show us exactly who we are in him. And that's what we need as humans, as women, as girls. Yeah. Yeah. So Dr. Kathi, thank you so much. I think we're gonna end it here. I will pull you off the screen. Anything else you'd like to say? I'm just so grateful that you came and had this conversation today.
Uh, I'm just so glad that God worked it out, that we ended up in line together and started talking,
Yes.
and so it could be worked out. And you've done a marvelous job. I love your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I will send you some links to it later when we're done, so that way you can share it. And I will probably make a nice segment of the two poems together, so that way they'll be in a nice short contrast together. But we'll work on that offline later. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much, Dr. Kathi. God bless you. And again, anything else you'd like to say before I pull you off?
No, just God bless your ministry and you and your family.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. You take care. All right. Bye bye. Woo, wow. Dr. Kathi, she was awesome. Her story is something else. The way God uses us, you never know. And part of something that she said really resonates with me, is because you never know when or how or why you go through certain things, why you go to situations, and you're like, God, why am I going through this? Why is this happening to me? And you don't know that God is literally building you for something great. He's using you because he knows who you are in him, and he knows, I need you to experience this, because I'm going to put you in a room, and I'm going to put you in a different place. I'm going to put you somewhere else where your experience will be able to help people. And that is exactly what's happened to Dr. Kathi, is that she was put in a place. God made her go through these things, made her do these horrific things, because he needed her voice to go into places like our Congress, to go into different rooms, to deal with politicians and lawmakers, so that her voice, that he could use her to do his work. So a lot of times, again, we go through things and we just don't know why we're going through it, but God does, because he is building us in the process. And I'm so glad that I was able to um, meet with her. I was able to hear her poem. And from that, God birthed something in me. And we've now created these two beautiful pieces that really does align together. And that was a God thing, you know, that was a God thing. So I thank her, and I thank you for taking the time today to join the Conservative Poet and listening to what we had to say. I pray that God is moving you, and just keep in mind, he might be using you right where you are. So be obedient in what God is doing in your life, and because you never know where he's going to take you in the journey. So thank you again. God bless and keep you all. I will leave you with this: blessings to all of you. May God keep you all always. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.